Welcome back. So this week we're going to talk about mental health days in school. Should we have them? Actually, in Oregon, they now passed a law that they're going to have mental health days in school. And so it's a really good question. Should we have mental health days in school? We're going to dig into that and talk about the whys and the hows. And then the next episode, we'll talk about how suicide's on the rise. And so should we be incorporating like screening into schools and giving kids, a chance to really screen this and take a day if they need a day, just like they do with their physical health. So want to hear your view on that, and we'll dig in.
Well, any of you who have children really want to pay attention this week. Also, if you've had a mental health problem, odds are it actually started when you were a child or you were a teenager. And so really caring for our kids is so important. Before we get to that, let me read one of the reviews. I am a former NC2A athlete by Brown Mom 4. With a history of concussion, entering midlife, ready to train my brain as I trained my body. I love that.
Yep.
Each episode is evidence-based, logical, and frankly, makes sense in a simple format. Started jotting notes on my ants, the automatic negative thoughts, and my compliance with supplements, omega-3, D3, turmeric, B12 magnesium that I had previously assumed were helpful, but now it has evidence to back it up. I am becoming a brain warrior.
I love that. Thank you for that. We have winners, book winners. We want to announce too. So we asked you guys to write in, and you did, and we picked winners. We did a drawing. And
so what was the contest? Just remind the new people that are listening.
So there are a couple ways to win. You can write in your question to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. That's our contact page. Or you can place a review on iTunes. You can also place a review on our webpage, brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. But we really would like you to place the review on iTunes, and we will pick winners. We do a drawing from those. And these are our latest winners. We've already contacted them. They're very excited. Helen Wall of North Dakota, Kathleen Hansen of Seattle, and Diane Carbajo, I hope I'm saying that right, Carbajo of Michigan. So thank you so much for listening and passing this message on, and we are super excited. Hope you enjoy that. They got a copy of the Brain Warriors Way cookbook. So let us know what you think of it. Let us know how it's helping you. And we're also going to be sending out from a previous episode, we did a giveaway on my friend Maria Ibrahim's book, Eat Like You Give a Fork. It's a great book. So hope you enjoy that as well. So fun.
Great.
Love giving stuff away.
All right. So mental health days for students, now legal in Oregon. Oregon students will be allowed to take mental health days off from school just as they would sick days under a new bill signed by the governor. The bill would allow excused school absences for mental or behavioral health and is a victory for youth activists who also unsuccessfully fought for gun control and lowering the voting age. The students behind the measure say it's meant to change the stigma around mental health in a state that has some of the highest suicide rates in the country. I guess I would have preferred they said brain health days.
Right.
Right? Because mental health, no matter how you frame it, is associated with stigma. And it's time to end the stigma in my new book. I got this great, let's see if I can find it quickly. I got this really great email from one of the people that works with me who has a son who has schizophrenia. And the email was the end of mental illness, the beginning of brain health. Mm-hmm. The words mental and illness make many people cringe. So I would love for the world to end that. I'm hoping we can start a revolution that flips those words, mental illness, to brain health.
I love that.
It's the whole point of the new book,
So-
The End of Mental Illness.
So, what do you think of that? What do you think of doing mental health days and making it equally as important as physical health days?
Well, I like it. I like it a lot. It acknowledges that the incidence of anxiety, depression, suicide, drug abuse in children is skyrocketing. And I don't remember this at all. Now, yes, I grew up in the 1960s. So, but there was a lot of turmoil. People forget in the 1960s, there was a lot of turmoil, drug abuse, Vietnam, protests, riots in cities. There still wasn't the incidence of anxiety and depression that occurs today.
I remember, here's the thing is it was such a rare thing. It was such a big deal when it happened. You still remember it. Like when I was a kid, there was a girl that killed herself, and that's the only one I can remember. But it was a big deal when someone did it. Now it's not quite as you hear about it. It's so tragic, but you hear about it more often. And so it's just it still shakes kids up. And I don't think we want to get to the point where we discount that because we get so used to it. That's what scares me is that it becomes so common that we start to oh, it's so sad. But, no, we need to really be paying attention because the numbers are just astronomical. They're skyrocketing. So I agree with you. It should be a brain health issue. So technically it really is a physical health day, but at least they're paying attention now. At least they are starting to be aware of it. Don't you think that's a good thing?
It is a good thing. But, one of my worries is they'll go and we'll do big screening for depression, and we should. But that's going to mean the numbers of antidepressants are going to go way up. And that may not be a good thing. The number of prescriptions for antidepressant medication since 1987, when Prozac was released, have gone up 400%. But the incidence of suicide, often a consequence of depression, went up 33% just since 1999.
Right.
So this massive increase in pharmaceuticals has not solved the problem.
Well, and it's interesting because the drug abuse rate in Oregon is really high, so you got to pay attention to that. The weather, right? So they don't have as much sunshine, so you got to pay attention to that. But also one thing that we've talked about on other podcasts, but I want to touch on again, because suicide in girls has doubled between 2000 and 2017. It's doubled. Birth control pills. No one's really talking about that and helping girls.
Birth control pills increase your risk of depression by 40%.
And if you're increasing your risk of depression, you're increasing your risk of suicide. So we just want to pay attention. We want to make you aware. Do we want you to get pregnant? No, but we want you to be aware that if you are taking birth control pills, that's a risk. And if you are doing that, at least do the things that are going to help you to minimize that risk.
So let's try to make this really practical. What are some of the things we think are driving this mental health epidemic in the United States?
Well, pot is, I'm sorry, but drugs and alcohol are one.
And as the perception of the dangerousness of a drug goes down, its use goes up.
Right.
And marijuana in, Pueblo, Colorado, there's a 1,700% increase in babies born positive for marijuana.
Right, TCH.
Right. So that's a concern.
We're not trying to demonize people who use drugs. That's not the point. The point is we also want to be realistic and present that it does increase your risk of depression.
Okay. So access to drugs. And Oregon was actually one of the first states that legalized marijuana.
Low vitamin D.
Low vitamin D because of the sun, but that hasn't changed in the last 10,000 years, right? The level of vitamin D in Oregon has been the same. Meriwether Lewis, Lewis and Clark, and actually very famous in Portland, Lewis and Clark actually killed himself. And one wonders it's because of the route he took, across the northern plains as opposed to the southern plains, if that made a difference. the incidence of social media, and everyone else's life is better than mine. Plus, there are copycats. There are actually sites online for cutters and things like that. So the influence of social media, the decrease in exercise because of the increase in streaming and video games.
And I have a question. Maybe you can answer this, because I've heard of this and I don't really understand it. I've heard of this incidence of when a kid kills himself, it can begin this like almost domino effect in certain towns. It's a little weird, but doesn't that happen? I've heard
there's
12 in one school one time.
There's a contagion.
What is that?
That's
crazy.
That you see the outpouring of love for the child who dies. You feel isolated and alone, and you feel like this is a way to solve problems. Now, having suicidal thoughts is not unusual.
Right.
There's one study in Seattle that 55% of the population at some point in their life had a suicidal thought. Now, suicidal actions are rare.
Very different.
And so just because you have a thought, it's like the weather, it can go away. If the thought doesn't go away, though, and you begin to develop a plan, that's when you must tell someone so that you can get the help you need. And sometimes it's biological.
Right.
You remember when they took you off thyroid and how that drove depression.
It was horrible.
Pancreatic cancer. So if there's a guy that's listening, they've never been depressed in their whole life, and now they're 52 and all of a sudden they have crushing depression, someone should do a CAT scan of their pancreas, because depression is one of the presenting symptoms for pancreatic cancer. So sometimes it can be a biological cause. In my new show, which I'm going to film soon, Change Your Brain, Heal Your Mind, based on my book, The End of Mental Illness. There's a line in there that I actually open Act 2 with: depression is not a Prozac deficiency.
Right.
It's a sign of a troubled brain. And, my hope with these mental health days, we changed them to brain health days, that we would actually be making much more progress.
And so let's, before we end, let's talk about some practical tips. So I love that schools are paying attention to this. It's really good because kids spend so much of their days at school. What can we do at home? So I know I like the idea of, which we do rituals as a family. We make sure that we're communicating.
Now be careful. Clarify this. We are not killing anything.
Okay, tradition. I like, let me change the word to traditions. Okay, so we have coffee in the mornings. When my daughter did go to traditional school, I would always make sure we left an extra 10 minutes early, because there's something about driving where kids open up, right? So that extra drive time in the morning, we would take a little drive through a nice area and she would talk more. I think keeping communication very open with kids is really important, don't you think? Talking. Finding a way, figuring out how to keep your kids talking.
People who are bonded are less depressed. They're less anxious. They have fewer suicidal thoughts. So being connected, and one thing we've talked about a lot is 20 minutes a day, do something with your child wants to do. And it decreases the incidence of mental illness if they're bonded and connected.
Right.
To you.
And just listening.
Bright light therapy. So a place like Oregon, or we just gave away books to a person in North Dakota, Michigan, and Montana, I think. And it's not Montana, but Seattle. Those are all northern cities. I wonder if we get more northern people listening to us. Bright light therapy can be helpful. There's actually great research that you get a light box, they're not very much money, that it can help you sleep, can help your mood, can help your energy, and help your focus. So getting more sunlight in the morning can be helpful. So
the light that we have in our sauna, does that count? Is that the same type of light you're talking about?
We have a sauna that actually has light therapy attached to it. No, I'm talking about the light boxes. There are a number of companies on Amazon, like Verilux is one, that you can actually put it on while you're doing your makeup for 30 minutes a day. And it's been shown head to head against Prozac.
Oh,
to
interesting.
be better for seasonal
Oh, that's
affective
fantastic.
disorder. So unfortunately, we're getting less light in the morning and more light at night because of our gadgets.
Right,
And
gadgets.
it's screwing up our circadian rhythm.
Oh, just so FYI, a little tip on that. You can get your glasses, you can get blue light blockers in your glasses, which I did.
Oh, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Except in the morning, you want blue lights.
Right.
Because it helps stimulate you and suppress melatonin.
That's one of the reasons
All right.
I like when we go outside for coffee.
We would love for you to post what's the one thing you learned from this short podcast. Post it on any of your own social media sites and tag us, Brain Warriors Way podcast. And then if you leave a review on Brain Warriors Way podcast or iTunes, we will enter you into a drawing for a free book.
And if you know someone struggling with depression, you can, try to talk to them or try to get them some help. You can call our number. You can, call someone local to you. But we need to help people that are struggling with this. All the things that are going on in schools with kids and struggling, we want to be sure we're reaching out to them and getting them the help they need. So, yeah.
Stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about young people and mental health issues, and we're so glad you joined us. Even if you don't have young people in your life, if you're listening to us, you may have struggled at some point.
Yeah.
And often these issues began in childhood or in adolescence. Did you know, on average, it's 11 years between the time a child first has their symptom and their first appointment to get help.
Right.
That is so sad.
And we've got a lot of kids in our life, right? that we sort of take care of and, that are in our family. And I don't know one of them that hasn't had some issue at some point. So,
it's more normal to have a problem than not to have a problem, at least if you're connected to us.
Right. So, but we're very aware of it and we're very proactive. So I want to start off with a testimonial. This is a new Brain Warrior by Sherry Luna. This podcast has helped to instill an appreciation for brain healthy living and has been a great daily reminder that health is wealth. I'm so glad that I can take this awesome advice with me everywhere I go. It's been such great listening while taking my daily walks around the neighborhood. I hope to become a devoted brain warrior and continue down this path of wholesome well-being. Thank you so much. That's awesome. So in the last episode, we were talking about mental health days, which you call brain health days, which I love. And let's talk about why this is so important. I mean, suicide's going up like crazy.
Well, it's so concerning. It's an epidemic, but since 1999, cancer has declined 27%, while suicide has gone up 33%. And the answer is why. And I believe we're just working on the wrong paradigm. We see depression as an illness as opposed to a cluster of symptoms that have so many different causes. And the final act of someone who's depressed is suicide. Now, in adolescence, because you think you're going to live forever, they don't really see the behavior as the end, even though it is.
Right.
And often people who kill themselves do it when they're drunk. They do it when they're intoxicated. They've had thoughts, but they had some measure of impulse control. And when you drink or do drugs, it often takes away your control, so you act out without forethought.
So these numbers are alarming. So in 2017, 5,016 males and 1,225 females between the ages of 15 and 24 in the United States killed themselves. That's very alarming. I mean, that's just crazy. But my question is, why so many more males than females?
So we've known that forever, that women make more attempts, about 4 times the number of attempts. because their ability to communicate is better generally. So they'll use the suicide gesture as a cry for help. When a male decides to do it, he's less likely to tell someone about it, and he's more likely to use violent means.
Oh,
and
that makes
so
sense.
more likely to shoot himself, hang himself.
And
as
girls don't really like
opposed
blood that much. And
well, you're a nurse, surgical ICU nurse, so
yeah,
you sort of
doesn't bother me.
doesn't bother you. So it's the method they choose, and also underlying level of communication for pain. So men or males, especially teenage males, will often not say they're sad, but they will act mad. Mm-hmm. And there's a huge connection between irritability, aggression, and suicide. Mm-hmm. So we think that's one of the major reasons for the gender difference.
And what's interesting is that according to the study in JAMA, it's not only the numbers, they're the highest they've ever been. It's not just because we're collecting data better. They're actually saying that the numbers are the highest they've ever been, taking into consideration, population, everything else. The numbers are going up, as far as percentage. And the female suicide has doubled from 2000 to 2017. What's going on?
Well, I think, as we alluded to in the last podcast, there are a lot of things going on. Our diet's bad, and
Does it change that much?
is changing.
So from 20 to 2017, though, not that much.
Well, it's not getting better. It seems to me, at least, to be getting worse. Everything's processed, everything's packaged, everything's quick. Social media,
that's worse.
Really wasn't much of a factor in 2000.
No.
And now it's everywhere.
Okay, so you just touched on something really important.
Well, and we have a 15-year-old, almost a 16-year-old. And she's actually pretty good with social media.
Because she knows it makes her sad.
And why does it make her sad?
She actually notices two things. When she spends too much time looking at any screen, she starts to feel a little wonky, like physically wonky. But she'll notice that she's like, why does everyone look like this? Why does everybody? And she just starts to notice that she's comparing all the time. And she doesn't like that, because when she doesn't look at it, she feels great about herself. So she notices.
Well,
it.
It's so funny, because I've been criticized a lot over the years for my work. I mean, because what we do is very different. And I find if I hang out with critical people,
right,
I feel bad. And if I just don't allow them in my life, I just feel so much happier about myself.
I don't think Chloe's unique. I think this is a very common thing with teens. Like I said, we have a lot of kids in our lives. Our niece is the same way. Other kids that we know are the same way. This is a common thing with kids, so much so that a lot of girls are doctoring their photos because they need to feel like they can compete with what's going on social media, which is part of the problem.
And then they don't have a level of authenticity.
No. And then they feel bad about that. So, I mean, that is a new love. That's something new to the scene for girls. For all kids, but girls, I think, are affected by it, tremendously.
Well, and when you think about it, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death overall, which is insane. That, the 10th lead in the top 10 people choosing to leave Earth early. Mm-hmm. It's the second leading cause of death among young people after motor vehicle accidents. And it may, if this trend continues, become the first.
Especially because now there are less kids dying in motor vehicle accidents because of Uber, and there are more kids dying of suicide because that's going up. So
I really thought about scanning all the Uber driver brains.
I know, that's a little scary. I'm like, we're just thinking that Uber is safer, and I'm not sure it is. So
if you have a teenager you're worried about, what can you do? So one, you can take our free brain health assessment online and know, which brain type do they have, and make sure you give them the nutrition and supplementation that can help them. So that's one thing to do. We also have a course, Brain Thrive by 25.
It's really good.
that they can take. Independent research was in 16 schools showed it decreased drug, alcohol, and tobacco use, decreased depression, and improved self-esteem. So teaching them to love their brains.
And what I like about that course is it really helps them to understand what telling a kid, oh, eat healthy, they don't really understand why they don't make the connection. It really helps them from a practical standpoint to understand why certain foods, food is medicine or it's poison, right? So why certain foods do tend to lead to things like depression and anxiety, whereas other foods tend to settle those down. Supplements, we talked about that before, vitamin D, fish oil, they can radically help for some people. Certain supplements just really help. So it's really helpful. That course is really great for that.
Well, and so from a supplement standpoint, I think all kids should take a multiple vitamin.
For sure.
Because it just gets them the nutrients they need
Because
that
they're
may
not
be
getting them
lacking
usually.
in their diet. All kids should be taking omega-3 fatty acids, fish oil. And many young teenagers are vegetarians for moral reasons, but it just plummets the omega-3
And
level
drives
in their
up
body.
omega-6.
It drives up omega-6 and it drives up inflammation,
Right.
which is a major cause of both depression and dementia.
And let me just touch on something. It doesn't have to do that. You can be conscious. You can pay it if you do it right. Sadly, kids tend to think that being a vegetarian means you can eat French fries and donuts, and like they don't really get it. It's like, oh, I'm just not eating animal protein. It doesn't work like that. So you can be a healthy vegetarian. You have to know what you're doing. So
yeah, no, one of our doctors was a vegetarian. His family's from India. And he's one of the most unhealthy people I've met.
Because he thought he could eat French fries and donuts.
Pasta and chips,
Right.
and all the things that
But
weren't
when
good.
he became
so,
clear.
So diet, supplementation, getting them more in the sun, actually measuring their vitamin D level. And, another thing that's happened in the last 20 years that people don't talk about much is the dermatologists won. They made us afraid of the sun.
Well, we have to be conscious.
And so, but vitamin D levels have plummeted. It's like 80% of the population is now low in vitamin D. And when you're low in vitamin D, leptin, the hormone that tells you to stop eating, doesn't work. So you're more likely to gain
bad
weight.
food.
And so if you're worried on social media about a body image issue, and
Just
now you're
creates anxiety.
overweight, it really, and the fat on your body also increases inflammation in your body. You see how it could spiral into a negative. So I just think everybody should measure their vitamin D if you're in a place like Oregon or like Seattle or Michigan, then you may need to take a supplement. And the recommended daily allowance, which is 400 international units a day, and Neurovite Plus, ours, it has 2,000 units. That's 5 times the RDA, because that's the dose that I think can get people into a healthy range.
And for some people, it takes a lot more than that. I mean, it depends on how.
Yeah, I take 7,000.
I take 7,000, and that keeps me in a normal range. It just depends on you and what you've got going on with your health, and you need to have it measured. So one thing before we end, I want to make sure if you know someone who's struggling with depression or suicidal thoughts, please don't let it go and think it's just going to get better. Help this person. Reach out. You can call our clinics. You can talk to someone at our care center. You can call the suicide prevention lifeline. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Yeah, so.
And there's a crisis text line that you can actually text home to 741-741 for immediate assistance, because, especially for young people,
They don't like calling.
They often aren't used to calling. They're used to texting.
Yeah. So this is really important. We really appreciate you guys listening and taking this seriously. Pass this on to someone you know. If you know someone struggling, our goal is to help decrease the stigma, and we want to help you get this message out. So make sure you leave a comment.
And one thing to tell your kids, if one of their friends tells them that they're suicidal. And they say, but please don't tell anyone. Always tell them never to listen to that. You have to tell someone because that's the responsible thing to do.
It's a really good point.
And it's a very high percentage of people who later killed themselves that told someone they were going to do it. And so just tell your kids, if somebody ever says that to you, say, I really care about you. I have to tell someone. And even if that person gets mad, it's better to be mad than dead.
Right. I love that. That's so true. So please leave a comment. Let us know if this has been helpful to you. Pass this on to someone that you know if they need it. And just, you can go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com, leave a comment. You can go to Tana Amen on Instagram or Daniel Amen, and we want to hear from you. Let us know if this has been helpful.
Thanks so much.
Welcome back. We have been talking about mental health days, what you like to call brain health days in schools, and should we have them? And I think it's a really interesting idea. I think it's every bit as important as physical health days because it is Physical Health Day. It's been really interesting. I've loved this week. And this episode, we're going to talk about why humans aren't actually designed to be happy. So really interesting. Stay with us because at the end, I want to hear from you. I know that sounds weird, why humans aren't biologically designed to be happy, but we're going to tell you what you can do to basically negate that, how you can change that and take control of it.
How you can redesign
Absolutely.
your mind.
Yes.
Oh, I like that. That'd be
Redesign your mind. Yeah, that's good.
Title for a book. But let me read a testimonial first. And we want you to submit them because we put all the testimonials or the reviews, even the bad ones, into a drawing for a free book. So, hi, Daniel and Tana. I wanted to let you know how you changed my life. I've always been a solo mom. I was single-handedly putting my daughter through Azusa Pacific, and
Wow.
I wasn't able to make ends meet. I'm trying to save money by eating whatever my employer offered me as a lunch buffet and trying to eat as cheaply as possible outside of that, and definitely not paying attention to what I was eating. I was just trying to get calories in without checking the quality of those calories. I went to my doctor with several health concerns: eczema, gaining weight, lackluster feeling, sleeping poorly, etc., that I was experiencing, and she did some blood work. The results were devastating. I was clearly not getting what my middle-aged body needed, and my results reflected this immediately. I started looking for solutions, and through Saddleback Church, I found the Daniel Plan because I was so enthralled by the results. From members, I read and watched everything that you two had available online and participated in the Brain Warriors Way group before the book and cookbook came out. That was so much fun.
It was fun
for us to do. The Brain Warriors Way really changed my life. I signed up for the book and cookbook before they were published. I went back to see my doctor. She did the same blood work, and she was astonished at the improvement. She asked how I turned my life around. So I told her about the Brain Warriors Way and how it made such a difference in my life.
Oh.
I keep up with you both by listening to your podcasts and following you on the websites. I take brain and body power vitamins, pro-brain biotics, and restful sleep. With all the improvements in my life, thanks to you two, I am now on my way to earning a master's degree in counseling psychology. I couldn't have done it without you. I'm so thankful you changed my life.
Is that not the coolest story? That's amazing. Thank you so much for sending that in. And I have to tell you, we've written a lot of books. You've written an insane number of books. I've written 9 plus a journal, and the Brain Warriors Way was that was the most fun for me. I loved it. So thank you for that. I love that. So let's talk about why humans are not designed to be happy. So there was a huge happiness and positive thinking. So the industry for happiness and positive thinking estimated to be worth $11 billion a year. But it's creating this fantasy that happiness is a realistic goal. So chasing the happiness dream is a very American concept that most other countries don't even follow, exported to the rest of the world through popular culture. Indeed, the pursuit of happiness is one of the U.S.'s unalienable rights. Unfortunately, this has helped to create an expectation that real life stubbornly refuses to deliver. So interesting. Let's talk about this because there's a biological reason this is true, but it doesn't mean you have to follow this, right? We are designed.
What's the question we want them to ask themselves now? Is it what makes you happy, or is happiness important to you?
For me, I think it would be, am I happy? And if not, how could I be happy? But I think by the end of this,
redesign?
yeah. So by the end of this, we want you to be able to answer that, right? Because humans are not biologically hardwired to notice what makes them happy or to notice what is good. We are hardwired to notice what is wrong, right? Especially those of us who have been through any kind of trauma in the past, you definitely notice what's wrong, right? Because we've had to for survival. Our survival instincts are to notice what's scary, what's threatening, what's wrong. And if you've lived that way as a child, you're even more conscious of it. So let's talk about it.
Well, from an evolutionary standpoint, we were made, or we evolved in
Running
a
from
time
tigers.
that was dangerous.
Right.
And there was, whenever you would wake up in the morning, if you woke up, it's what's going to eat me, what's going to hurt me, what's going to be the trouble today. So humans are incredibly resilient. But when you wake up, and so many of my patients, they wake up with fear. And there's a biological reason for that, is that when you're just waking up, your brain is actually pretty sleepy.
So you go back to
But
that.
your cingulate is active. It's the most active part of your brain. So your worry center is active, but your more thoughtful brain
Isn't awake.
is on vacation. And so you wake up with...
So that's a super interesting idea that we used to be that way. So this is going to be weird. I would love to actually get your feedback on this, males versus females, because I got to tell you, most females feel that way every day anyways, right? Maybe not every day, not when you're at home, but we have to be more conscious, right? We are more conscious.
Women have anxiety and depression double.
But I'm talking about regarding safety, right? If we're walking somewhere and it's night, you're paying attention because we're bred that way from the time we are little kids. Be careful, look around, pay attention, who's around you, because it's just easier to overpower us, right? Or it's easier to be put into situations. So just as a whole, women have to be more careful. And so we've been raised to think that way anyways.
So there's probably a genetic memory part of that, and we've talked about the mouse study a bunch of times, that they made mice afraid of the scent of cherry blossoms, and they found their children were afraid of the scent of cherry blossoms, and their grandchildren were afraid of the scent of cherry blossoms. So we just go back even a couple of generations. If you think of the Holocaust, or you think of World War I, and then World War II, and then Vietnam, there's a lot of trauma that is housed in our genes. That the trauma you experienced as a teenager, unless you take care of it, you may in some ways donate that to the next
Well,
generation.
but I think as women, we do that intentionally to our girls because we want them to be paying attention. So, I mean, I would love to hear from our listeners I certainly did, because I was attacked at 15 walking to school. I've made sure that my daughter pays attention. She takes martial arts. She's able to pay attention, look around, and protect herself.
So yes, we're wired.
Male, female.
We're wired for anxiety. And low levels of anxiety, just to let you know, are bad for you, right? If you don't have enough anxiety, you give your phone number to the first guy you meet in the bar, which may be a bad thing.
Right.
That you drive 125 miles an hour down the freeway
That's
in
my
the
point.
rain.
Right.
So some anxiety is absolutely essential. But, we promised you that we teach you to redesign your
Right.
mind. I like that title a lot. And how do you do it? You wake up every day and you say to yourself, today is going to be a great day. And when we do that as part of our ritual in the morning, why is your day going to be a great day? Your unconscious mind finds it and then will focus on it. If you just wake up and you allow your designed brain to be unhappy, then you're going to be unhappy. So wake up every day and change your focus.
So for me, one thing that I do is I don't focus on being happy as much as I focus on being grateful for what I have. And so I have to tell a funny story about about the game. Do you remember the game you were trying to get me to play, the brain game, to notice the happy faces? And do you remember that?
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I use this story a lot. So when you take Web Neuro, so those of you that are BrainFit Life members, which is our online and mobile app, you can take Web Neuro. It measures 17 areas of cognitive function. Well, 2 of those areas are how good are you at recognizing faces, and do you recognize happy faces faster than sad faces? Well, my partner in crime, Tana, has the CIA pattern where she's really good at recognizing faces, but she recognizes the bad guys way more than the good guys.
And we got into this, I won't call it an argument, but debate. Let's call it a heated debate, because you were frustrated with me. You're like, you need to do this game every day and start focusing on the happy phases because you'll be happier. And I'm like,
we have games to train happiness.
And I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I'm like, I don't want to notice the happy faces. I want to notice the terrorists. I don't care about people walking past me that are smiling. I care about the guy that's a threat. I care about the guy that's going to attack my kid, that's going to shoot someone. Those are the ones I want to notice. And we were just having this heated debate. So just a little side note away from that's why I don't really focus on happy as much as I focus on gratitude, because there's a certain part of my brain I know that's always going to be that way. You think of it as me being sometimes paranoid, and I don't. I think of it as me being prepared. So based on...
I'm a clinical psychiatrist.
I know, but...
So I can diagnose paranoid.
Yeah, but I'm not buying it. So I see, for me, what helps me is being prepared.
All right. So
Gratitude
gratitude has been associated with happiness,
right,
for sure. If you just write down 3 things you're grateful for every
Absolutely.
day, you'll notice a significant increase in your level of happiness. At the end of each day, what I do, I say a prayer before I go to bed, and then I just think, well, what great thing happened today?
Yes.
What went well today?
That I'm willing
training
to do.
happiness. And happiness, I don't think, is actually a great goal. I think a great goal is purposefulness.
Yes.
Why am I here? And what did I do today to make the world a better place?
And I like that, because happiness is sort of a fleeting thought or feeling, whereas when you're purposeful, it's this deeper sense of joy that it brings you. And that's different to me.
And if you're not about yourself, I think this is one of the reasons suicide has gone up so much in teenagers, because of social media. It's all about me,
right,
and my likes and my fans and what other people say about me. And I think that's dangerous.
Right.
Where when we get testimonials like the one we got today with the woman who's getting a master's degree in counseling psychology, and our work's been important to her, that makes me happy.
And
but it's not, my goal's not happiness.
Right.
My goal is usefulness.
Yes. It's purposefulness and helping. And there's also a reason that people say that religion is the opiate of the masses, right? But if you stop and think about it for a minute, why is that a bad thing, right? Your prayer, meditation, communication, fellowship, those are all very good things. So biopsychosocial, spiritual, that we talk about, those 4 circles, when you talk about things like religion, which involves prayer and community, and we think of prayer and meditation being very similar, right? So you're focusing on something very positive. Those are things that help you to be happier.
Well, science actually says it's not a bad thing that people who go to church,
Right.
That they live longer,
Right.
synagogue or to the mosque. They're part of a group of people who want to do good things in the world.
Right. It's
And
not a crutch, it's a hospital.
Religion has, there's been lots and lots of bad things
Of course.
done with religion, but there's been lots and lots of bad things done without it.
And there's been lots and lots
I
of good
think
things
the
done
opiate
too.
of the masses actually came from an atheist cocaine addict,
Right.
which was Freud.
I wasn't going to say it, but
came up with ideas like penis envy. It's like,
Right.
really? I never sort of got it. He had lots of great ideas, but some of them were insane.
So there's
humans aren't designed to be happy, but you can redesign your mind.
There's a really great saying that I love. Success is having what you want, and happiness is wanting what you have. So it's learning to be
Well, then I'm like
satisfied.
a super happy person.
Me
because
too.
I have you.
Me too.
Me too? You have you too?
No, I have you too.
So what's the one thing you can take away from this episode? Write it on your social media channels and hashtag Brain Warriors Way podcast. We'd be so grateful. Also, leave a review on iTunes or brainwarriorswaypodcast.com, and we'll enter you into a drawing for a free book. We love giving books away. Welcome back. We're talking about mental health in children and teenagers. What we're going to start doing on the podcast is every week we don't have a guest. We're going to use the fourth podcast to answer your questions. So if you go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com, we'd love for you to leave a review, but leave questions that you think might be relevant not only to you, but to other people as well. But before we get there, you have one of the reviews to read.
I do. It says, "It makes total sense" by Bainter Jr. The information in Dr. Amen's book, and now recommunicated and updated via the podcast, makes total sense. Our brain is a beautiful work of art, piece of equipment, and great machine. However, you want to describe it. Can I change my brain overnight? Probably not, but I can listen to all this information and make changes along the way. That's great.
But, it's an interesting comment because tomorrow I can have a much better brain if I go to sleep at a reasonable time tonight.
Right.
Tomorrow I can have a much worse brain if I get drunk tonight, probably not. If I take sleeping pills or Xanax on a regular basis. If you have a fit and somehow decide you hate me. So we
Where'd that come
can
from?
change our brains very quickly by doing the right things or by doing the wrong things.
And I often tell people you can just do better today than you did yesterday. Do better tomorrow than you did today. And you're just every day you're going to feel a little bit better. So that's actually very accurate. So here's our first question by Rupal or RuPaul. "I have developed severe schizophrenia. What should I do? My speech got disorganized, thoughts able to understand less, and nightmares happens and delusions. Please help me out with diet, exercise, etc. I'm taking," is that Amazeo?
Amazeo.
"At night."
That's actually a great question. I'm so glad she asked. It's sort of why I wrote my new book that's coming out in March called The End of Mental Illness. Schizophrenia is a symptom cluster where you begin to lose reality and what's real and what's not real. You can have hallucinations, visual hallucinations where you see things that aren't there, auditory hallucinations where you hear things that aren't there, even tactile hallucinations. You might feel bugs crawling on you. Mm-hmm. And you develop delusions, which are basically firm, fixed beliefs that just aren't true. And given your education and experience, you should know they're not true. So those are the hallmarks. But they're what we call the positive symptoms of schizophrenia, but there are a lot of negative symptoms of schizophrenia, which means you don't take care of yourself. You don't bathe. You're tired. You're disorganized and apathetic, sometimes even catatonic. And the question is, I'm really suffering. What can I do? And no matter what brain health issue you have, and schizophrenia, I actually don't think of it as a mental health issue. It's a brain health issue. You want to put your brain in a healing environment. So all the things we talk about in the Brain Warriors Way is really important. Plus, in my mind, I'm like, why did that happen?
Right.
Because it's not as genetically linked as we would have hoped. For example, I mean, if you have schizophrenia, 10% of your children are going to have schizophrenia, but that means 90% aren't. My son-in-law, Jesse, mother has schizophrenia. And when we scanned her, she had a very severe head injury when she was 17. She went through a windshield of a car. And if you damage your frontal lobe, well, is your brain more likely to have problems? Absolutely, in all sorts of different ways.
It's one of the things I was going to ask you is there a common pattern with schizophrenia? I mean, is it more likely if you have a brain injury, or is there a typical pattern that you see?
The common pattern on scans is low frontal lobe activity.
Oh, so a brain injury would make a big difference then.
And often excessive dopamine. And so their basal ganglia may be high.
So busy.
But what we have seen on scans is schizophrenia is not one thing.
Just like everything else.
Everything is not one thing. We have OCD-like schizophrenics, and we have ADD-like schizophrenics, because some people's brains work too hard, some not hard enough. One of the most interesting things we discovered was that if you look at a map of the United States with the highest incidence of schizophrenia, it's basically across the Northeast, the West Coast, and the Northern Midwest.
I saw this.
And if you look at the highest incidence of Lyme disease, it's nearly identical. And I think everybody who's diagnosed with schizophrenia should at least be screened for Lyme to see if that's not one of the possibilities. And I have so many good cases that'll just make you cry.
I remember Adriana's story. It's just crazy.
I get a text from her mom every day at noon. How can I pray for you today?
That's so sweet. That story was just crazy.
Yeah. So, Rupal, we're so excited that you listen. And what I want you to do now, when I have a schizophrenic patient, I put them on antipsychotic medication. But we don't stop there ever. We want you to put your brain in a healing environment. Measure your omega-3 fatty acid levels, measure your hormones, look at all of the Bright Minds risk factors that I talk about in my book. And one of my books I think you'll really like that's just out recently is Feel Better Fast and Make It Last.
So one of the things I want to just reiterate, because you just talked about possibly getting screened for Lyme. So that was one thing you mentioned. And she asked about I don't know if it's he or she, asked about exercise. Make sure you do what you can do. So I always tell people, focus on what you can do, not on what you can't do. If walking is the thing you can do, then make sure you're walking. If you can do some mild cardio and some light weightlifting, do that, because getting oxygen to your brain is going to be helpful, right?
Well, and another thing is coordination exercises, because with low frontal lobes that often go with schizophrenia, often goes low cerebellar activity. And, just pick up ping pong or dance or pickleball, tennis. Coordination exercises can actually help your brain work better.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you so much. Okay, next question. This is Karina. I am an elementary school teacher with way too much brain fog. Not a good combination when I need mental agility all day long, no doubt. What are your top most effective suggestions for clearing brain fog? I look forward to learning how to make a difference for myself and sharing with my students practical ways that they can also be brain warriors. Good
do you
question.
Remember Anne's story?
Yeah, I do. Yep, I was just thinking about that. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to let you start with this, but that's a great story. It's a great reference.
So Chloe had a great elementary school teacher that she loved her. We loved her. She was really great. And then one day she approached you, I think.
I was volunteering in the class, and she was trying to get a certification. She had her master's degree, but she was working on a certification, and she could not focus. And this was a really smart, high level thinking person. We just adored her. And she's like, I can't function. She said, could I come into the clinic? And so we said, absolutely. So she came into the clinic, you saw her, and the first thing you said is, we'll scan you, but not today. You need to go get your thyroid checked. You need to go see your endocrinologist because you had checked her.
Well, no, I didn't want her to see the endocrinologist. I wanted her to get me her thyroid results.
After you got them.
They had done just a cursory, like so many family practice doctors do. They do a TSH and a T3, and if those are normal, you're fine. And I'm like, I want you to get thyroid antibodies. So I did a full thyroid panel, and her thyroid antibodies were crazy high.
Right. That's what I meant. So after you saw her antibodies, you were like, you need to go to your endocrinologist because I think you have Hashimoto's. And so, and her doctor didn't want to follow up on it. It was the craziest thing. Her endocrinologist didn't. But they finally did. She pushed and pushed, and they finally did. And she had Hashimoto's. And so getting her on some thyroid medication made all the difference. So the point that I wanted to make here is you need to assess, you need to screen and figure out what's causing it, right? So get your numbers checked. One of the things we talk about in Brain Warriors Way is assessment. Knowing all of your numbers, get all of your numbers checked and know what it is. How do you know, like you always say, if you don't look, right? So, and cleaning up your diet. So knowing if something in your diet is causing it.
Well, and so I think it's really going after all of the Bright Minds risk factors that we talk about. Brain fog can be due to low blood flow to the brain. It can be due to you've had ADD your whole life, and it's hard for you to function. Brain fog is more common as we age. It is associated with inflammation. So if you have low levels of omega-3 fatty acids, if your gut health isn't right, your brain health is not likely to be right. Yes, it can happen after head trauma. It can happen if you're drinking too much. I'm just so tired of alcohol as a health food, and it's not. It damages your gut. It increases your risk of 7 different kinds of cancer. It can be an autoimmune problem.
Right.
It can be because your diet's terrible.
Right.
So just working on, these risk factors can help you so much. And I think, if you go brain fog, it's the first couple of things to do is assess your important health numbers.
Right.
I think that'd be the first thing I would do.
That's what we did with.
I would be changing your diet, getting rid of things like gluten and dairy, just for a month, see if they affect you. Although I saw gluten today, and I'm thinking, I'm not actually really sensitive to gluten. But in 100% of animals, it increases leaky gut. And today I just decided I love my gut, right? I mean, I love my brain every day, but I want to love my gut so I can love my brain.
Every time I have that thought, I end up peeling. Like my fingers peel, I get weird blisters. I have that thought every once in a while. I'm like, a little bit's not going to hurt. And then I'm like, why did I do that? It was just so dumb. I know better. So.
Know better, do better.
Yep.
We have time for one more question?
We do. So third question is from Ashley. I hope I can reach out to you guys here. I've tried things like SAM-E, GABA, and other similar natural supplements. I've spent a fortune on these products to help with anxiety, depression, and inattentive ADD. These have all made me feel awful. One gave me suicidal thoughts and made me want to jump out of my skin. Right now, I just take ADD meds the past 8 years. Not sure if I get that reaction because I'm using them together. Any tips about that?
Well, I think I would read my book, Healing ADD, and see which of the 7 types you have. And she might have anxious ADD. And I would continue to work on it because it's not only hard for you, but it's hard for the people who love you. And
And
I would
also-
also consider coming to the clinic and getting a scan.
Right.
Because if, you end up with suicidal thoughts on supplements, it could be your temporal lobe isn't healthy, and sometimes being on a mood stabilizer may make a huge positive difference for you.
Well, and one thing I've heard you say a lot, and I like it because it's true, is, supplements are not just, people have this tendency, like, I can just take any supplement. No, you have to know which ones to take for your brain type. So if you're not in a position to come in, then at least take the brain health, assessment online.
Brainhealthassessment.com.
Right. And also understanding things like certain supplements, just like certain medications, affect your brain in certain ways. So that's really important to know. And so don't you have a lot of that in healing ADD?
I do.
Yeah. So it's just really important to know that some of them actually make you, they're to help increase focus, while others make you feel more mellow. Right. So you want to know that.
We're so glad that you have stayed with us, doing, I think we're on 450 or something crazy podcasts. We're really interested in creating a community of dedicated brain warriors, people who are armed, prepared, and aware to win the fight of your life. Our society is not helping us stay healthy. They pay money when you are sick, and I'm not okay with that. You shouldn't be either.
Nope.
And we're grateful that you've invited us into your lives, and we're just excited every week to be
Thank
here
you.
with you. If you got an idea or a useful thought from this podcast or this week of podcasts, please write them on any of your social media channels, hashtag Brain Warriors Way podcast. Also leave a comment or review, a question at iTunes or at brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. When you do, we will enter you into drawing for a free book. If you ask a question, we will try to answer as many as we can on the air. Stay with us.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're considering coming to Amen clinics or trying some of the brain healthy supplements from BrainMD, you can use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or a 10% discount on all supplements at brainmdhealth.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.